It's time now for another episode of Pats from the Past podcast, where we travel down memory lane with the former Patriot great. And who better to join us today than number 32, C.J. Craig James, one of the OG member of the Pony Express, right? Along with Eric Dickerson.
Absolutely.
Which we're going to talk about, because how can you talk to Craig James without talking about that before his Patriots career?
Anything that gets me back to high school, Matt.
That's great.
We're going to talk
Craig,
about it.
thanks for joining us, man. This is going to be fun.
Privilege. You know, I walk in this stadium and I'm cracking up because I'm back in the 80s, right? And when I walked up to Sullivan Stadium, you know, we didn't have no film room like this.
Right.
Wasn't even a thought back then.
Right. But Craig, you said you were here last June. Explain that. Why were you here for Tom Brady Day?
Well, I got to get the invitation to come in for the Brady celebration, which was just remarkable. But I wanted to see Dante Scarnecchia because Scar and I, we were back together at SMU. He was here when I was playing for the Patriots. He was, you know, like a legend. He's been here since before Billy Sullivan bought the team, right? Scar's just one of those legendary guys, and I got a chance to speak with him and see him. But what a great night that was. I was so proud to be an alum. What a privilege to be a part of the Patriots organization. I sent a handwritten note to Mr. Kraft and just said, man, what an awesome night and a display of the fans. The fans here in New England showed off last year in June.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're really happy with the way that whole night, because a lot of people in the organization had a lot to do with that. So we felt like that was a really strong night for the entire organization, and I'm glad that so many alums came back for that. There was a lot of people from a lot of different eras that took part in that, and I think it was a huge success.
Well, you know, it's like I had a chance to see Tony Collins and Doug Flutie and a bunch of my teammates that I had not seen in years. You know, you have to walk up nowadays, 40 years later, and say, "Hey, Craig James, good to see you. Who are you?"
Yeah, but I tell you what, Craig, I'm not like. You don't look a little bit different. You look like Craig James. Maybe your hair's a little lighter, but that's about it. I was joking with you before we started that Eric could give you 10 or 15 snaps. I wonder if there's a halfback option play that maybe one that you could do if pitch it out there. I think you could probably still get a first down off of that, couldn't you?
Thank you very much. I'd be really good with pregame warm-up and pat and go. If somebody hit me, I would cry.
That's funny. Like I said, to kick things off, I think people here in New England are somewhat versed on the legend of how it began. But the idea that two kids who went to high school in Texas, two of the best at their position, could be recruited and play for the same college and be so prolific. I mean, that story never gets old, does it? The Pony Express at SMU with you and Eric Dickerson?
We've been nearly 50 years friends. We love each other. We're like brothers. And the fact that now we can look back on it and realize what we did was really unique. And someone asked me, the media made a big deal about it. I had won the Vince Lombardi NFL Offensive Player of the year after Eric had been the NFL MVP. And they said, how did two guys go to the same team in Dallas at SMU? How did that happen? I said, it was Dallas. It was Ron Meyer, our head coach at the time. A lot of energy. But it just, as Eric and I say, the Pony Express, we were better together.
So did you ever have any trepidation? Being a running back, there's only one guy that's going to get the carry. I'm sure that both you and Eric felt like you were the man coming out of high school. Was there any concerns that you were going to be able to share the backfield together and be as successful as you were?
He had rushed for over 2,000 yards as a senior. We were in different classifications in Texas. Both of our teams had won state championships, so we both thought we were pretty good. We were both All-Americans. When we get to SMU, Ron Meyer made it work. He convinced us that you guys are going to be fresher for your 20 carries each per game. I think he averaged 20, averaged 19. And so now that we look back on it, it really helped. Eric says it tremendously that it helped him prolong his career. He wasn't beat up when he got there, so he was able to play longer. And so, yeah, we could have been selfish, but we also recognized that in the third and fourth quarter, defenses were worn out. And Eric and I would say to each other on the sideline, hey, they're dragging. They're tired. We got them. And you just couldn't keep up with both of us.
It's kind of rare, though, isn't it? I mean, like, to your point, there's not too many people who are the guy who are going, and I'm still going to be the guy, aren't I, that can subjugate their ego and say, I think it might be better for the team, for our careers and everything physically like that, to split this.
We were friends. Had we not been friends, it would have never worked.
There you go.
It's truly. I mean, we've never had one cross word with each other. No bad thought, even to this day. And so, other than when he beats me really bad in golf, he's a great golfer.
So the thing that I like about this is it sort of starts in the reason why the Pony Express is, obviously a really interesting story for a lot of reasons and a lot of people, but for the Patriots specifically, Ron Meyer is there, and he ends up coming to New England. And we talked about Dante a little bit. Like, it's like kind of like that first chapter of the story for the Patriots. Like, Ron Meyer, what did he mean to you, at SMU, and then when he ends up coming here, and you eventually come as well?
Ron Meyer was not an X and O guy. I mean, he knew football, but he was a talent guy, and he knew great assistant coaches, and he had a staff that was phenomenal. Steve Sidwell, Dante Scarnecchia. There was all of them were world-class coaches, assistant coaches, and he made them make sure we knew what we were doing as athletes, and he knew an athlete, and so he knew what you could or could not do, and he'd put you in position to have success. And so Ron really had unfortunately, him getting fired, led to Raymond Berry, which was a blessing for the organization. But Ron got it started, with the assistant coaches that he brought in here, like Dante Scarnecchia,
who's in the Team Hall of Fame, who's had an unbelievable career, Craig. Did you see some of that? Did you, as a kid who's playing at college, did you see this world-class coaching staff? And then specifically, what did Scar help meet you for the 2 years that you and Dante were together at SMU?
I don't think as a young athlete that you appreciate what the coach is doing until it's not happening. Mm-hmm. And then especially when you get down the road and you can look back and reflect and say, well, why weren't we doing this? Nothing against the system when I came in here as a rookie, but we had a really hard time, very complicated pass protection scheme. I've got Sam, or I've got strong safety, or I've got that. But then I've got that. When you get a football player thinking, you got problems, you got sacks. And so Scar cleaned that up. He just said, look, let's simplify this thing. Let's make sure we know who we're gonna block. If you can't do that, then you can't be successful. So as I look back on it now, the assistant coaches that Ron Meyer had and that Raymond Berry had, that Belichick had, every one of them had a job and a role and a responsibility. They were really good at it. You got to have Jimmys, you got to have the Joes, but you got to have the coaches.
So when you came out of SMU and decided to get into the draft, it was USFL first. I think it was the Washington Federals.
Yep.
What was behind that decision to go that route?
I had been told by my agent that this USFL was going to have a draft a few days after we played in the Cotton Bowl. I'd gone home to Houston. I get a phone call from my agent. He says, hey, they select you, the 4th player taken in the USFL draft. Wow. Okay. He said, we have to go to Washington out of respect. Let's go up out of respect. Within moments of being around this ownership group in Washington, I realized they were very serious about what they were doing. And it was significantly more money than I would have been slotted. I knew I was going to be a first rounder in the NFL, or was projected to be. But I was like, I like the idea of pioneering. It was a great spirit. And there was a ton of great football players, obviously,
Absolutely.
who went to the USFL.
Yeah.
I'm glad that happened because it led me to playing for New England. Had I not played there, where Ron, then they started taking USFL players in the 7th round so that they would have the rights for us if that league went boobs. Yeah. And thank God that I was able to get away from there and to play for the New England Patriots. So it was a blessing.
Because the Federals, like most of the teams in the USFL and eventually the entire league, they ran out of dough, right? You get hurt in Washington. Mm-hmm. And Meyer, amongst other people, again, in the National Football League, had the foresight to go, I wonder if some of these USFL guys, how long is this going to last? It was the Meyer drafting you in the 7th round. Well, you're not a 7th round draft pick, but that's an insurance policy over here. Is that kind of maybe how that was communicated?
Yeah, for sure. It was good for me because I knew that if it didn't work out in the USFL, well, I was going to go to New England. And for Ron, he had a guy that he knew about and that what I could do with my talents. And so they started taking the Jim Kellys and Herschel Walkers and all the great players that were in the USFL, started going in the 7th round, and they had our rights.
What was it like playing in the USFL? I mean, when it originally started, people look at all the spring leagues now that are sort of struggling but the USFL was at a much higher level than the spring leagues now. What was it like playing in it?
Oh man, we had a lot of really good players. Not on the Washington Federals, worst team I ever played on. Half of my teammates had just got out of jail. The other half were on their way to prison. But it was a league full of talent, but there was a discrepancy in spending amongst the organizations, right? So that there was not enough quality for that to happen, and then they wanted to go and jump beyond and try to challenge the NFL, et cetera, and it fell apart. But there were a lot of noteworthy, great football players that came through the USFL.
So you're drafted by the Patriots in the 7th round. You get hurt. Your contract, or is it that the Federals disband? How do you go from Washington, knowing that the Patriots have your rights at that point in time in '84, Craig?
So it was a very legalistic move there. They had my rights, but the USFL was just waiting for someone to try to pluck away one of their players. So we had to have every USFL owner sign off on a waiver that said, hey, we're not going to sue you, New England, if you work a deal out with Craig to leave the Federals. I had to travel under an assumed name.
Oh,
I mean, it was, we were meeting in places that were secretive. It was a big deal. I think Roger Goodell may have been on the legal team. Paul Tagliabue was like a lawyer for the NFL before the commissioner role. And so there was a lot of behind-the-scenes things that happened legally to allow that to happen. But it got Washington off the hook. They ended up going down to Orlando, I believe. And but it kept them going, relieved them of my financial debt, and the Patriots assumed that.
Was that unsettling as a kid? Because you just want to play football. You're coming off of an injury. Like, I want to get back. I want to do things. But there's all this maneuvering that has to happen in order for you to get there.
Yeah. I remember a guy named Coy Bacon played for the Redskins?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So I was 21 years old in Washington in a locker room with a guy that he looked like he was 50. and I knew he'd played 20 years of the NFL football. And I said, Mr. Bacon, I said, is this really like pro football? And he goes, you getting paid, ain't you, kid? I go, well, there are rumors that has been happening the previous 4 years, too, at SMU.
Right.
He cracked up.
Right. Well, I think that's always, like we were joking about this the other day. You had to take a pay cut. To go to either the USFL or the NFL, right?
At least we had to report it.
Right.
So we were the NIL before the NIL.
Exactly.
Right. Now everything you guys did then it's all above board now.
I mean, we could go a whole show just on college football and the whole NIL world. But good for the players. They're finally getting taken care of and compensated.
Absolutely.
It's a scramble out there right now, and they've got to corral it a little bit.
Did you get a car that was as nice as Eric's?
No, but I'm not going to say I was riding a horse either.
So the difference is obviously you had the connection with Ron Meyer, but he was only here half that season, right? So what was it like? What were the differences between he and Ray Berry?
Oddly enough, Ron being my coach here was a negative to me.
Really?
It really hurt me. I came in and competed in training camp, and I thought that I had beat out Tony Collins, who was an all-pro and a great runner and a locker room favorite. But I thought I had won that job in that position, and it just ate me up that I wasn't getting the carries that I wanted. And I understood Ron's position. Hey, if I put my college kid in there over my locker room favorite and leader and a really good player in Tony Collins, I'm going to lose my locker room. So I understood that. Ron got fired. We're on the flight to Denver, Raymond Berry's first game, and he walks to me on the plane. He says, hey, you're starting tomorrow. I started, ran for 120 yards and 800 yards in the second half. Averaged 4.9 a carry. I have no doubt in my mind, if I'd have been a starter, this is nothing against Tony Collins. Tony Collins was a great football player, great running back. I'd have ran for 1,600 to 1,800 yards that rookie year because we had it going on as an offensive line that particular season.
Did you get a sense in '84 as you're becoming a little bit more of a central figure in the offense? Hey, we got something here. Were there building blocks and a foundation that you believe were laid towards that second half of the '84 season that would help you define that '85 team?
I think it was really in the coach's hands to figure out exactly what are we going to be. They had seen that we were a powerful team, that we believed we could run the ball, and if it was 3rd and 1, we were going to do it. We didn't need the tush push. We ran the football.
Right.
Steve Grogan or Tony Easton would ask us, hey, can we get this on 3rd and 2? Yes, we can. So I think we had to make a decision in '85. We got all these weapons out there, receivers, Irving Fryer, Stanley Morgan, all these great players, all these runners, Tony Collins, Craig James, Mosi Tupu. We got all these players, Dawson at tight end. What are we going to be? And when we decided that we were going to be a physical running football team, that's when we took over and we made our way to the Super Bowl.
So was there a time in '85? Was there a game that maybe you guys said, "Okay, this is different. We're a little bit better. We can do something." You win 11 games in '85. But was there a moment in that season where you said, "Okay, this is a playoff team, and we're as good as all these other teams now"?
I think just as you go along and you start playing and having success, and especially on the road, I think the inner confidence that we had that we were physical and good. We knew we had a great defense, a really good defense. We had really good special teams. We had guys playing roles that were turning the ball over for us. I think the more, it just was a snowball. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. And so, we got beat bad by Chicago in Chicago earlier in that season. It was 20-7.
Right.
Well, it wasn't too bad.
Right. You had a big play.
And so
90-yarder.
Richard Dent, I have become friends with and been around more than when we played. And he always gave me a hard time. I said, yeah, but Richard, it seems like I still remember that I think I own the Soldier Field longest pass reception touchdown in history, 90 yards.
That was the longest Patriots touchdown for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
90-yard touchdown.
Craig, you mentioned physicality, and you had also talked about, that you were here for the Brady event. And I don't know why I find this interesting. There's no question who the greatest player in franchise history is for the Patriots, and that's Tom Brady. But I think there's an interesting debate as to who's number 2, and then therefore because who's number 3. And they both played with you, in my opinion, on that team. Let's talk about, first, the guy who helped you offensively, John Hannah. Is there a better guard in the history of the National Football League than Hoggy?
Yeah, when you start talking about it, arguably he has got to be in the conversation. A big man, a beast, tenacious, and did it week in and week out. We're playing at Denver. The game that I started, that first game that I started, John had been in the hospital during the week, and Pete Brock said that John never missed practices. It just never happened, and so we couldn't believe he wasn't there. He met us on the tarmac at the airport, walks out of like an ambulatory van with an IV bottle hooked up to him, and he walks up the deal and gets on the plane, leaves his IV stuck in him right there, flies to Denver, and I ran behind him for most of those 120 yards that day.
And that doesn't surprise you about him, does it?
No.
That's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah. He made everybody around him better because he demanded it. If you didn't do your job, Brian Holloway was a great player because John Hannah made sure Brian played. Brian did not want to hear from John Hannah.
So who's the other one in contention, Paul?
Tip?
So Tippett, I'm so glad Tip, he really liked me, especially in 2 days. That way, when we did the one-on-one pass blocking drill, running back and a linebacker, the most idiotic drill ever. There's no threat of a run or nothing, right? It's a bad drill. all good for the linebacker. They don't have to worry about anything. They just blow you up. Tip would take it easy on me, and he would beat me, but it was just easy. So Andre Tippett was every bit as good as Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor lived in New York, and at that time with all that big New York media. But LT was a great player, similar size. You couldn't run away from him. You couldn't run away from Andre Tippett. Tip was a great player, and I'm glad to hear you say he's one of those 3 in your mind about the greatest players.
I think it's a really interesting battle between, again, give Brady his flowers, and he was well-deserved. But after him, is it Hannah? Is it Tippett? And it's probably about, like, what flavor ice cream do you like better? A Hall of Famer defender?
Both Hall of Famers.
Or a Hall of Fame offensive lineman?
We're a little biased because, he works upstairs.
Right.
We're still just a little bit afraid of him.
Absolutely.
Not going to lie.
As well we should be.
Hey, man, I still, when I see Lawrence Taylor somewhere, I don't like to go up to him. he had a tackle on me. And the first tackle, we were here playing a game, and he makes the first tackle on me, and it was like a 12-yard gain. And he gave me a little bit of a thigh bruise, but he stood up and said something. I go, that's all right, I'll be back. And I was like, man, I hope he didn't do me.
Did you just piss him off? The running back position today, Craig, has been a little bit undervalued. Everybody throws the ball. Paul loves it. It's had a little bit of a renaissance last year with Barkley, Derrick Henry, and things like that. But I look back at that 85 team, and you mentioned some of these guys. You were the leading rusher on the 85 team, but it's Robert Weathers. Mm-hmm. It's Tony Collins. Mm-hmm. It's Mosi Tutupu. Mm-hmm. It's you. Like, it wasn't running back by committee, but you had a lot of different tools in the bag. The coaching staff had a lot of different tools in the bag. They could beat you a lot of different ways, and we might have seen how that worked in the AFC Championship game, would you guess, against the Dolphins?
Great analogy. We kind of had our short yardage goal line package, which was Robert and Mosi. They'd come in, TC and I'd come out. We had certain packages that worked really well as a team. a selfless team. You know, you had to have that kind of mentality to make that thing work. But the fact that we had so many different players and each one had a role, and you know, you had the Belichick way that came after our way. You know, I always looked at our '85 team in this way. It was an honor to be a part of a team that Billy Sullivan was still here with and founded, and his son was the general manager. We got smoked in the Super Bowl, but we got there. We showed that this organization, these coaches, this front office, you can get there. The players will be gone, but there'll be different people here. You have to knock on the door. You have to open the door before you can run through the door. And that led the way for a lot of teams and the successes that they had down the road. I think our team really opened the door for belief that it can happen.
Can you take us a little bit on that road, you know, the ride of those 3 games? You know, 3 games on the road, first team, you know, to do that and make it to the Super Bowl. What was it like when that got started? Where was the confidence level for you guys as you entered the postseason?
Raymond Berry had a really cool saying about, you know, he'd go, hey, all right, men. You know, men, and his fingers were crooked from his playing days. He goes, what are we looking at when we look at the bullseye? And you know, well, you're shooting an arrow. Well, you're looking at the bullseye. No, you got to look at the center of the bullseye. And he was really big on focus. We have 1 game this week. We're going to go play the New York Jets. That's it. We're going to go play the New York Jets. And a lot of coaches preach this stuff and say these things, but they don't live this thing. Raymond Berry was focused on the center of the bullseye. And so, therefore, it was contagious amongst the players. And then we had that confidence because we had a great defense, we had a great special teams, and we had a great offense. We could run the football. So we had everything that was needed for the team to do really well.
So when you talk about the special teams, because it just seemed like every week someone was mishandling a kick.
Yeah,
like, do you start to think, hey, it's destiny. We're supposed to be winning these games. We're, you know, because the Patriots, our whole lives, always found a way to get hit by the train when, you know, you got to the light at the end of the tunnel. And that was the one time where now all the breaks are going the Patriots' way. There's no mystery flag taking away a big play, but it's Jim Bowman recovering fumbles and you guys forcing these
Johnny Rembert
score. Yeah, I mean, it started with the Jets game and it just continued with the Raiders and right on. You know, I think Miami still. I think Miami just turned it over again in the AFC Championship.
You get in the head of your opponent because you've got this reputation of creating turnovers. So now if you're playing us, you're sitting there thinking, am I going to be the guy that's going to fumble this thing? Am I going to turn it over? Am I going to miss a block that causes a fumble, strip sack? And so you get in their head. We had a fumble drill at every practice that Raymond did, and you had to pick up 2 balls. Everybody on the team, they dropped the ball, you had to fall on it. And it made us become instinctive, you know, second nature. You fall on the ball, pick it up. I'm sure nowadays that a lot of coaches do that with a fumble drill. But for us, it was like, it was instincts. Ball's on the ground, you're on the ball, you know, and so it paid off.
I don't think today's Patriot fan can understand the importance of going into the Orange Bowl in the AFC Championship game. You know, we talked today about Mile High Stadium and, you know, Joe Robbie, I call it still, or whatever they call it this week, Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. It's never been a great place for the Patriots to play. You had lost in a heartbreaker in the regular season down there. We had that game won. And it's just like, well, they're not going to be able to go down in Miami. This is Marino. It's, you know, Duper. It's Clayton and everything like that. How big was that game, and was your confidence in there? You know what? We've been able to play with these guys. We should have won the game in the regular season. We're going to beat them this time.
Wasn't it like 18 years or something?
Yeah.
It was like a long time. It was like you're going to go lose in the Orange Bowl.
Squish
whatever they call it.
The fish.
Squish the fish. Man, there was a pep rally. The magnitude of the importance to the fans and to us.
Yeah.
Some guy came up to me and he had tattooed on his deal, you know, Craig James. He goes, squish the fish. And I was like, oh, dude, is that a permanent marker? Or is that real?
Right.
But we get down there. Before we got down there, we knew we were going to beat them, and they knew we were going to beat them. Dan Marino said, he said, I can't believe you guys beat us. I said, we had no doubt in our mind. We were going to physically beat you.
That's exactly what happened.
You were not going to take that game from us. And that was the kind of attitude. I remember the exuberance, the excitement that we had after the game, dancing on the sideline. And I remember saying, man, we got one more game, man. Let's go do this one more time.
To get to that place, though, Craig, you were doing it. You talked about all the weapons that you had, the physicality of the offensive line, the great defense. I don't recall it being controversial, but Grogan played and Easton played. And I'm sure that there was an Easton camp, and I'm sure there was a Grogan camp, but somehow, some way, Raymond sort of helped massage that to get you to the Super Bowl that year.
I think hats off to those two guys for them not causing a stink about it. Steve and Tony were both outstanding quarterbacks in their own way. Tony Easton was a really talented quarterback, and he was a great player. Steve Grogan was Steve Grogan. You know what? Steve Grogan, one year he would walk in the huddle and they let him call the plays.
As well he should have probably. He had that kind of ability.
He had the instincts. Yeah, and he knew us. He could feel it in the game. So we had two really good quarterbacks, but I think any championship team, I was blessed to have been on a state championship in Texas in high school. Arguably the best team I ever played on, a really good team. College championship teams, and then the NFL playing on an AFC championship team. Every one of those teams had a common denominator: selfless. Team. Teams win. Individuals don't win.
I think I still have the T-shirt probably buried someplace in a closet, the Bury the Bears T-shirt. Do you remember Bury the Bears? So you talked about your confidence going into the AFC Championship game against Miami. This Bears team, in hindsight, my words, no, I'm not asking, I am going to ask you, that's the best NFL team I think I've seen in my lifetime. Where was your confidence level? You'd lost to them close in the regular season, but what was that 2-week period like, knowing that you're going up against the vaunted Chicago Bears?
Going back and looking at the moments of that leading up to that game, I wish I had known how long the pregame was, about all of the stuff. I mean, we knew coming out of the AFC Championship game the next week here in Foxborough, the number of media attention was phenomenal. I mean, it was cameras everywhere. So we knew that was there. We had great confidence that we were going to go down there and run the football. And when Lynn Dawson got hurt and took away one of our tight ends,
first down.
When we couldn't go too tight and run the football, they would have stopped us 2 out of 4 times. But those other 2 times, we'd have got them. And we'd have been a much better game, different game. Don't take anything from the Chicago Bears. They were a great team, had the unique defense, the 4-6. They had the right personalities in place for all of that. But I remember during the week, we're in New Orleans, and I kept hearing Jim McMahon and the Bears are out on Bourbon Street partying it up. We had a curfew. We were going to bed at 11 or 12 o'clock. So after the fact, I was like, next time I ever play the Super Bowl, we're going to hammer it.
So that team, like Matt's right, that Bears team was special. What was, you mentioned the 46 defense, what made that such a challenge to go against?
I remember coming off the field after 1 or 2 series, and Bobby Greer, my running back coach at the time, he said, "Hey, what are you seeing?" I said, "I think they got one more guy than we do."
They got 15 guys up there.
Right. They're illegal over there.
Right.
But they were close. They were hunkered down. And if you wanted to throw the football, which it wanted you to do, you couldn't block them. They were going to have somebody get to your quarterback. You didn't have the normal 2.9 seconds. You were going to get sacked. You had to get rid of it. And so then, therefore, that's why you had to have the too tight, run it, pound them, man on man, let's go. But then they have an extra man in the box. Well, that was going to be up to the running backs. Then we had to take care of that extra guy. It just never got to that point. But they were unique.
So not that we need to go into all the play-by-play of obviously a disappointing finish, but that first series, you mentioned Lynn's injury on the first down. You get the turnover. I think Peyton fumbled.
Yep.
Right out of the chute. So 17-year-old Paul Perillo is like, it's going to happen. It's happened. The turnovers are going to happen again. I had completely convinced myself. And you go pass. Kind of against your identity as a running team.
Yeah.
You look back at that and say, maybe we're just taking a shot because that's what they want you to do. If you're going to beat them, that's what Miami did a few weeks before. That's how they beat them, by throwing it all over the place.
Miami was Miami.
Miami, yeah.
Quick pass, getting rid of it. That was their unique thing. New England, we were New England. We ran the football, and I know I was wanting to run the football, man. I didn't want to. We weren't going to get soft. It was a fist fight brawl, and we were ready for it.
You mentioned some of the best teams that you were on. Is this 85 AFC Championship team in that conversation for you, Craig?
Yes, absolutely. And to accomplish what we did, not expected to do that, and to go on the road 3 playoff games in a row, which, as you mentioned, was the first time that had ever happened. I think it's maybe happened once since.
The Ravens might have done it, right?
Yeah,
Is that?
I think so.
Yeah, it's a hard task. I mean, home field advantage means something in the NFL, and we took that away from them. And so it was a great football team that we had here. I thought we were better the next year in '86, and that we were headed to the Super Bowl again. And it reminded me of how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl. We go to Denver and we can't beat John Elway. We ran out of gas. The altitude, whatever it was, John Elway. But I thought we were better and going to have a great chance that next year.
So we
We discussed about
we nailed that one.
We discussed that because we said they were better in '86 than they were in '85. Why did you think you were better?
Experience. You've been there. You've done it. Confidence. We're not hoping or guessing. We've been there. We've done this. We can get in that Super Bowl game again. And so it was between the ears that we were better, which made us better physically on the field.
So you had some similarities there. You talked about being the road team and how difficult it is. We know about the Orange Bowl on 18 or whatever consecutive losses. Mile High was the same.
Yes.
First of all, which one did you think was more difficult to play?
Mile
Was it
High.
Mile High because of the altitude?
We even went out that '86 season. We went and spent a week training in Colorado Springs, higher altitude, and it was going to get us ready for the game. So opening series, I have like a 10-yard run. I go around the corner. I'm tapping my helmet. I'm coming out. I'm like that. Well, that's so much for that that strategy. It's a real advantage for any pro team in Denver to have a visitor come in there who's not used to the altitude.
When you look back at it, Craig, because then injuries, like what happens with a lot of people in the NFL, happen. How do you look back at, obviously fondly, but how do you look back at your NFL career?
I feel like I had the ability to run for 10,000 plus yards in the NFL, but you got to stay healthy. You have to get lucky. And in my time, when my shoulder went out on me and it dislocated out the backside, which was rare and unique, one of my strengths was I was strong, and I would get in the weight room in the off season, and I was really strong. And then I found myself doing arm curls and dumbbell presses and pretty boy weights, and that wasn't my style. And so I'm sad that I wasn't able to play another 4 or 5 years with a great offensive line and a great system. But I'm also amazed that I got to play in the NFL. I was blessed to have played here in a Pro Bowl, being named Lombardi NFL Offensive Player of the Year, Patriots MVP. I think I'm on the All-Decades team in the 80s here. As a kid, are you kidding me? That I got a chance to do that in the National Football League for the New England Patriots? What a blessing.
And can you put into words, and I don't know if you talk about it with guys like Tony Collins or people like that. Again, you guys lit the match, okay? It wasn't linear. It wasn't just that straight trajectory. But when you see what the organization has become and the success that they had, it had to start someplace.
Yeah.
Is there a little bit of pride that people like yourself and others go, you know what? Kudos to them. Kudos to Bob Kraft, who really took this thing and took it to the next level. Yeah. But we helped start something.
Yeah.
To make this an asset that his family wanted to buy.
So think about Bob Kraft. I'm sure he was a Patriots fan of the 1985 team.
No question.
He's watching this organization do that and gets almost there to a world championship, a Super Bowl. And then he has the money and the ability to come in and buy it. It had an impact on him. So it impacted the family of Patriot fans, organization, players. When they come through here and they go through the Hall of Fame, they see what's on those walls in there. And it started in 1985. We got there. We knocked on the door, and very, very proud of that.
Do you get much interaction with those players, those teammates, from those mid-'80s teams?
No, not really, just because I live in Texas. I do have a home, and I've spent every summer up here on the Cape, and we love New England. Last year, like I said, being a part of the Tom Brady Hall of Fame celebration here reminds you as a player how fortunate you were to be a part of this organization. So thankful. I think back to the AFC Championship ring we got. I don't wear it all the time. I'm told that the cost of each player's ring was about what Billy Sullivan paid for the whole organization. So nowadays, you look at these rings and they're just monstrous. 1987, walking out on Route 1 with my teammates on strike for free agency. Plan B we got. Dak Prescott, when he signed that $550 million deal, I just had a chance to go to his home and to meet him, and he said, "Hey, thank you for what you guys did."
That's what it's all about.
I was like, man, I was already a Dak fan. But for these kids today, Football is still blocking and tackling. Zone defense, man defense, a combination. You got to block and tackle. You can get fancy. We had a run with me, check with me at the line of scrimmage for pass or run as well. And they try to act like it's different, but it was a violent game back then. And today's players, not that they couldn't have played in that era, but they'd have had to learn how to play in an era where there were no unprotected players. I mean, defenseless players. You could tackle the quarterback however you wanted to tackle him. You could hit a receiver however you wanted to hit him. It was a violent game. And I'm just thankful that I got a chance to do it.
Deuce is going to be pissed if I don't get this one in because we talked about Grogan and Eason. Who had 3 touchdown passes in that 85 season?
That's right. How about that? And I'd have had 4. Irving Fryer dropped one. I'd have had 2.
What do you think Irving would say? He would probably say it's a lousy
He probably
ball.
had a cut on his hand that
Yeah,
day.
right. Smurf would say, "Dang it, you're right, CJ, man, I'm sorry."
Did you like that they implemented that?
Oh,
Craig?
absolutely. The halfback pass was amazing because it forced, if I'm back there at tailback, and they would give me that, and I ran it in college, I threw a bunch as well. It forced the safety just to pause. Or the corner coming up. Is he going to throw it? Or is he really going to run this thing? And it just gave me just a little bit of an edge. My last one that I threw was to a defensive back for the Denver Broncos.
Oh,
It was completed just to the wrong guy.
That's great.
Do you watch much of the game now? Do you?
Yeah.
You still?
But you know what's different? The 23 years that I did the broadcast and announcing games, I knew every trainer, equipment manager, player. I knew it all. Nowadays, I'm just a fan. You know, I don't know anybody. I know there's a kid here from SMU on the team trying to make it here, Brandon Crossley. I hope BC's a great player, passionate. But I mean, I don't know these guys. I watch them, I follow them, and I see them, and I see their struggles, and how hard it is.
Do you like being a fan? Is it fun to be a fan?
It's easier being a fan.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. I miss the microphone every once in a while whenever something comes up where there's an item or an issue, a change. College football is going to change again.
Yep.
There's going to be another shift, and it's going to be all Big Ten and all SEC schools, and they're going to invite another 30-ish from around to join them. And so there's a scramble to be in part of that next 30 in the next 4 or 5 years. And that's taken place. The NFL, the guys who come in here, you know, if you could sit down and talk to them and say, hey, look, I remember as 40 years ago when older guys would walk in and talk to us. I would say to them, one of these days you're going to be that 64-year-old guy sitting there, and you're going to be finished. And it's a fleeting moment that you're playing. Could be 7 years. It could be 14 years, 10 years, 2 years. It's going to be over with. So do whatever you can to be accountable to yourself and accountable to your teammates, and if you do that, you'll have success.
Great message. Craig, thanks for coming by. Great to see you.
Man, you guys have rushed the memories back to me, and I thank y'all so much for allowing me to be a part of this.